Well, I would like to thank all the audience that have registered today, and thank you, Bushlani, for hosting this webinar. I would like to get to the agenda, if it's possible. Today, we're gonna see how we can, with the help of WSO2 API Manager, companies can cut their time to market dramatically by using the API Manager in general, using Puppet Script for automatic deployment, Amazon Web Service for cloud web hosting, and combining WSO2 API Manager with WSO2 BAM, Business Activity Monitor for billing, and also using WSO2 Identity Server for central identity management. We're gonna see all kind of products. We have Puppet, Amazon, of course WSO2 products. We have the WSO2 API Manager, which is the why we did the webinar today. We have the Enterprise Service Bus, the BAM, and the Identity Server. API Manager is a complete solution to publish other parties in APIs. It unlocks services and manages the access of each consumer. This solution initiates and develops communities that build applications and service around the API to provide processes, service for itself and for other third parties. You can make an analogy by comparing to Google Play or Markets for Android devices or App Store for Apple products. It's very easy to use. The way it works, you just sign up for an API and you can start using it. It also allows you to manage users through various services, and also is powered by WSO2 Identity Server, which in that way you can unify all the access and authorization. WSO2 API Manager supports the OAuth 2. It has an extreme high performance pass-through message with a latency of just milliseconds. It enforces rate limiting of consumers and provides us with an easy development into clusters. WSO2 API Manager can scale millions of developers and users. So it's a very high performance availability product of the WSO2 stack. API Lifecycle Management. WSO2 API Manager also manages the lifecycle from the moment it's created, published, until it retires. You can publish both your API production and sandbox to provide the development community the sample to learn to deal with your API. API Manager is the API Manager is fully compatible with other WSO2 products which you can make useful in your context. For example, later on, we're going to show how we can combine the API Manager with the WSO2 Business Activity Monitor for building consumer accessing backend services. So now I will hand you the specialist, the architecture, Sumeda, to talk about the API Manager architecture.
Hi. At a higher level, we have three web applications. One is called API Publisher, the other one called API Store, and then there's an administrative application. So let's see what is the purpose of these applications. First of all, when you create an API, there has to be an application which would allow you to do that. So API Publisher is that application that will allow you to create an API. Now, what would happen if you would have an existing endpoint which is already providing the data. So at the publisher, you would be reusing that endpoint and creating a proxy API for the backend capability. And once you publish, there could be certain other things like attaching documentation, attaching sample. Now, once all that process is done, you can mark the API as a published one. So at this point, the API would start appearing on the other web application, which is called the store, or in other words, API store, so that developers who are interested in the APIs can go in and view those. So something to note in here is the set of users who would be publishing APIs, we call them API creators or API publishers, are different from the set of users who are going to consume these APIs, or we call them consumers. So the people who are going to consume these APIs are typically developers who are going to write applications against these APIs. So once you subscribe to an API, you would be given an access token and a couple of other tokens that will help you to generate an access token. And what the application developer would do is he would embed some of these keys within the application and write the application. So once the application is ready and once it is being used by end users of course will obtain tokens on their behalf, and the API calls will get routed through the API gateway. Now it is at this point we'll be checking for the token, and then we'll be enforcing policies like caching, throttling, and then of course other mediation extensions, and we can even publish to the Google Analytics at this point. So once you go past all of those checks, we actually call them handlers, your request would hit the backend API. So this is the general overall architecture of the very high level architecture of the API Manager, and of course based on the requirement, some of these components can be deployed in a scalable way. So for example, if your API deployment is having very large number of API calls, you might want to increase the number of gateway nodes. Or else, if you have a failover requirement to ensure that a certain capability is available if a failure happens, there are also that these components can be deployed in such way so that they support failover. So this is the general overview of the API Manager at a very high level. So I'm going to hand over to Muhammad, who will explain the solution that they have done using this API Manager.
Thank you, Sumedha, for your explanation about the API Manager architecture. I would like to continue now to another powerful tool, that is Puppet. Puppet is an automation tool that manages different aspects of your service, of your server and systems. It ensures fast consistency of your system application after fast changes. Puppet is becoming a must tool for DevOps team, and it can decrease your time to market in a very important manner. You can also enroll your production and attachment monitoring with rules, which can provide us with different type of information about service and systems. Most importantly, you can easily and perfectly configure your WSO2 instance, products and clusters with Puppet. It also allows you to enroll your Amazon instance like Elastic Clouding, etc. Security is very important in technology. That's why Puppet can ensure you a secure OS baseline, which means a pile of rules that can be checked and validated for each server. For example, not use root access for applications accounts. Amazon Web Service. Amazon Web Service is very easy to use. It allows applications to provide it allows application providers and vendors to quickly and securely host their application. Using the Amazon Web Service tools, you can easily manage and scale your service and use other features. You can easily create your own Elastic Cloud server, provided with an easy interface. It's environment DevOps friendly, no waiting for time for new servers. Amazon Web Service go easy on the pocket because you can pay for only what you use. This allows you to optimize your costs by halting automatically your development environment and test environment at night and starting in the morning. This can lead to a significant saving on the long term. You can always use other components, out-of-the-box components, such as databases, load balancers, net machines, and etc. So getting to the case study we are going to provide the audience today is billing the users or consumers for the use of backend services. We should provide detailed information for each customer of each service consumed, such as time and date, how many attempts, parameters, etc. This information can be used to justify the bill sent to the client. Managing versions and services is very important since the services are constantly changing and improving. The big challenge is that this system needs to go online very soon in order to start billing the services that are already available for the clients and for further services. To brainstorm a little bit about this company is a huge company. I'm sorry, we're not allowed to tell you the company's name, so my apologies for that. As I was saying, this company is a huge company that acts as a monopoly for energy distribution, such as gas, electricity, around Holland. It delivers energy to over 3 million customers. This company is on the rise by renewing the energy sources, by replacing old energy resources by sustainable ones. This, of course, creates a new business era and requires new systems to conquer the challenge for implementing new requirements. The company has a network of companies through which it needs to process, share data, services, and of course, as we all know, sharing is not always free. But to implement this ambition, some serious subjects come to mind. It should guarantee security based on sensitive data, because sensitive data is going to be shared through clients. Also, it should provide excellent performance and high availability for its clients. And last but not least, credentials. Credentials is a very important manner since clients, for example, client A does not have the right to see the data of client B. It's very important to provide access to the client to specific services that it needs carefully, maintain the customer privacy through the lifecycle of the request. To sum up, I would like to refer it as challenges in the next slide. To begin with is that the company should provide a secure entrance through its services and server, verify the client credentials of the service requested, providing access on need-to-know basis, since we are dealing with delicate, sensitive customer data, trace and manage each request of the client for future billing purposes, and of course, provide high availability, guarantee performance, maintain customer privacy. Use of the API Manager. So for billing the consumers, we make use of the API Manager through which we can manage access to each service. For big organizations, security is always the highest priority. It's very important that all our APIs are secure in a correct, uniform way. For that, the API Manager can help us to easily secure our APIs through the use of different mechanisms such as authentication through OAuth 2, restrict API access token, etc. Another interesting dimension is that the energy market is a very competitive place. This means that once again, the time to market needs to be short and the need of delivering APIs must be fast. We only want to expose the right services and be able to maintain them on one place. The API Manager is like any other WSO2 product, easily scalable. In combining with Puppet, we can scale up in a matter of minutes. So this is the whole API stack. WSO2 is a huge stack of products. We use some of them, such as API Manager, for exposing our services and managing access. We use the BAM to monitor our activities on the ESB and API Manager. ESB is used for our backend services, and we use the identity server for securing our APIs and services. We use also the governance registry to configure our governance of the service. We used many adapters such as Salesforce and SAP adapters that are connected through the backend. Today we'll focus and discuss the API Manager to look into the features and how it easily can be used, scaled, and developed manually or using Puppet, and how it can be implemented in the customer huge environments. And we will also look at how we can combine the API Manager with a BAM to bill our customers for using the APIs. We start with some general information on how we set up the API gateway and how we manage our environment with Puppet and other products such as Amazon Web Service. This is a basic illustration how the mechanism works. First, the customer production team publishes a brand new API on the publisher. Once that has done, the publisher communicates with the store entity and stores the API into its registry. At this point, the API is available for the consumer with all possible information such as description or maybe even the fee to pay for consumption. If the client is interested, he can subscribe to this API and start consuming. Of course, he can start consuming if the API gateway approves that the customer can use this API and has access to it. Once that is done, the API gateway will communicate with the backend services and start processing the client's request. So how did we set it up with our clients? Of course, the API Manager, you can split the API Manager into three components: the API Gateway, the API Store, and the API Publisher. We place the API Gateway and the API Store on a public service, which is the DMZ. This way, the clients can use the API and can subscribe to an API. The publisher, no client needs to access this component, so we put it on a private network. Of course, you can cluster the API Gateway. It's recommended to cluster the API Gateway to have a high performance for the clients, and you can also cluster the API Store. To have a global view, well, this is a simple and modest design how the system works. First of all, as you can see, we've split the API Manager into three components: Gateway, Store, and Publisher. This is much easier manageable for the production environment. We can configure the API Gateway and the API Store on the DMZ network, as we stated before. This way, the client can consume a service or subscribe to one. We have the ESB and the BAM and the API Publisher on an internal network through which can communicate with the API Gateway and Store. This architecture responded to the requirements of our client. I would like to explain this architecture through a use case we can all enroll together. First, we have a client's request. This comes through an API Manager or API Gateway through a load balancer. Of course, in this case, we use the load balancer, the out-of-the-box components of Amazon Web Services. After that, the API Gateway consults with the identity server to check his identity. Of course, we did this to have the access in a uniformly way. Once the request is authenticated, it verifies if it has surpassed the number of requests allowed on the request service. Because with the API Manager, you can allow a number of requests on an API. This is one powerful feature of the API Manager. This is one of the powerful features of the API Manager, to correct myself. API Gateway, in this case, notify the BAM, providing all information that it needs, such as date, time, etc., in order for future billing services. It forwards the request to the ESB and returns the results. Now I'll pass the word to my fellow colleague Sumedha. Sumedha?
I'm sorry, I think we might have lost audio on Sumedha's end. Apologies for that. I'm just trying to get him back online.
I think the audio needed a little pause.
Apologies for the inconvenience, just trying to get Sumedha back online. So if you can bear with us for a couple of minutes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Sharia, sorry, I was on mute.
Oh, no worries.
So I've explained the complete slide. Okay, let me start back. So we have recently released API Manager 170. This was last week, and we thought of explaining some of the highlights of this release. So if you're familiar with API Manager 160, something that you would immediately notice is this API design wizard, which would allow the APIs to be designed in more steps. So first of all, you can create a skeleton API, and for each of the sub-resources, you can provide a plugin and implementation, JavaScript-based implementation, so that without having an implemented backend, you can mock the API. And then we have introduced support for auth scopes, so that now you can have resource level authorization for an API. And then we have also added statistics dashboard for the API store. So primarily for the developers to see how their subscribed APIs are performing through application. And we have also enabled multi-tenancy for the workflow. Workflow support has been there since 160. So basically we have added workflow capabilities for the access token generation, and we have made sure it is behaving in a multi-tenanted way. And within the API, when you are defining resources, all this time we were only supporting URL patterns, but with this release onward, we are supporting URL templating as well, so that you can provide more customized URL patterns when you're defining an API. And the tenant store can be now customized for each and every tenant. And another key highlight is the addition of the forum. So basically, there are two types of forums. One is the common forum, public forum, and APIs also will have their own forum, so that any visibility restricted API can have its private forum discussing certain things. And these forum topics are indexed so that you can search for forums by topic. And another highlight is visibility control for the documentation, which is turned off by default. So basically, this would allow, okay, if you're familiar with visibility control for the API, you are telling either your API can be fully public or visibility controlled by a role. So same type of configuration option is available for the documentation as well, so that you can hide documentation for a certain user group. So that is the purpose of the visibility control for the documentation. And we have also added added capability of obtaining WSO2 token using a Windows NTLM token. So these are some of the highlights in the API Manager 170. We hope you download and provide us feedback on the new features. Over to you, Mohammed.
So we're getting to part to the Q&A, the question and answer. I hope that the audience enjoyed this webinar, and we're prepared to take on some questions.
Thank you very much, Mohammed and Sumedha. So we are now open for the Q&A session, and you can send in any questions that you may have with regards to what is covered in the presentation. And while I allow you a couple of minutes to send in your questions, let me just briefly talk about Yenlo, who is a WSO2 partner and in fact a gold sponsor of this year's WSO2 Con EU, which is happening in Barcelona in next month. It's around the corner. In fact, it's from the 16th to the 18th of June. So Yenlo basically is a Dutch-based software development and consulting company focused on middleware and business process management, and they've been around since 2007, and I'm sure Mohammed explained a bit about the company as well. So we're delighted to have you guys on board presenting the webinar. Like I mentioned, it's the second webinar this year, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's the second webinar for this quarter, in fact, which is great, and we look forward to many more webinars with you. Also, to talk a little bit, all right, I will hand over back to the presenters to answer your questions.
So we've received some questions. The first question is, what was the most challenging part in setting up this WSO2 stack for this consumer? Tobias, could you answer this one? I know we worked together on this project, so I would like
sure. No problem, Mohammed. Let me give myself a quick introduction. My name is Tobias Groothuizen. I'm a colleague of Mohammed and also a senior WSO2 consultant at Yenlo. And I've indeed worked on this project with Mohammed. So the question was, if I got it correctly, is what was the most difficult part of implementing this infrastructure? I would say that actually everything went fairly smoothly. I think the most challenging part for us was working with a new standard called SCIM. We use SCIM for our user provisioning to our backend services, and especially getting SCIM to work with Salesforce.com as a backend service was a little bit of a challenge. This was mainly because it's a fairly new standard, and at least Salesforce.com didn't quite implement it fully, or at least not the way we expected it. So it was quite a bit of challenge to get that to work, but in the end we made it work, also with a little bit of support from WSO2 at our side. Yeah, I would say that was the biggest challenge. Overall, just the main infrastructure rollout went pretty smoothly, especially with Puppet being such a nice tool, getting everything automated. I was very happy with that.
Thank you, Tobias. We have another question. That question is, did the API manager met the consumer's needs? I think I responded to this question during during the session, sorry. I stated that we did meet the requirements, the needs of our customer, of the energy company. So yes, our answer to that question is yes. We did a proof of concept with them, and they were very satisfied with it, and we went on, we did the project.
Yeah, I think if I can add a little bit to that, Mohammed, I think the main requirements of the client were lifecycle management and versioning of the APIs. And so being able to support multiple versions of the same API, being able to deprecate a version and retire it, and making sure that's all done in a controlled manner. And this suited very well to the possibilities that the API manager gave us. And I think the other main requirement was being able to expose the APIs using all of the OAuth2 standards, which of course comes out of the box with WSO2 API Manager. So that was a nice fit.
Thank you, Tobias. Due to limited time, I think we have to limit this part of the session to these two questions. To swiftly move on, I think Kushani could talk a little bit about WSO2, the company.
Yes, indeed. So, so I'm sure many of you are already somewhat familiar with what you do, and if you've been part of our webinars, or if you've interacted with WSO2 to some point, you would have a brief understanding of what we do. But in simple, we are an open source enterprise middleware company, and we have 18 products, all open source, which can be, of course, downloaded, tested, and tried out. And these open source products are backed by a very strong model of support. And the support model that we have is flexible, such that we take into consideration your business projects, your budgets, and basically the outcome that you desire. And we can customize our levels of support depending on the business project at hand and the business requirements that you have. Talking a little bit about our history, we've been around since 2005, and we were founded by leaders in XML, web service technologies, standards, and open source. We have Dr. Sanjeev Veeravarna, who is CEO and co-founder, and Paul Fremantle, CTO and co-founder of WSO2. So over the years that we've been around, we've seen products being added on to the stack, and in fact the product explored today. The WSO2 API Manager was launched 2 years ago in 2012, and Since then, we've seen many advancements of the product, and if you've, like I mentioned, engaged previously with WSO2, we've got plenty of content about the WSO2 API Manager. Speaking of last year, we launched WSO2 App Factory in the second quarter, and also the Enterprise Store, and one of the most exciting launches for last year, which was the launch of the WSO2 Enterprise Mobility Manager, which is the first open source mobile solution in the fourth quarter of 2013. All right, I think anything else that Mohammed, that you guys would like to discuss?
Yes, I would like to talk about Yenlo, as you promised me. I like the term Ruslan used earlier, the golden company, because yeah, we are a strategic partner of WSO2 through Europe. And yes, it is founded in 2007 with an international focus. We are currently in 4 countries, which is Belgium, UK, Holland, and Germany. It's the #1 field of integrations. We have customers all around Europe. It's the #1 in managing the service of middleware environments. It's a global strategic alliance of WSO2, which I stated earlier. And we deliver a lot of services such as enterprise architecture, software development, managed services, WSO2 product support, WSO2 development support, WSO2 quick start, training, certifications, and events. Of course, we do these services in compliance with our partner WSO2. We also give workshops and trainings through Europe. The next workshop will be in Berlin, 11 June 2014. After that, Stuttgart, Prague, Manchester, Vienna, and Brussels. You can also find these presentations on SlideShare, slideshare.net/yellowbv. And thank you for your attention.
All right, thank you very much, Mohammed, Tobias, and Sumedha, for joining us on today's webinar. All upcoming WSO2 webinars are listed on our corporate website, wso2.com/events. You can check out upcoming webinars from there. In fact, for those of you obviously interested in API management, we have a webinar coming up in a couple of days. That's, let me tell you the exact title. Application development around API management, conducted on Wednesday by Sami Sabe-Singer, who is Vice President of Delivery at WSO2. Sending across the link to you to register if you are interested. Once again, thank you very much to our guest presenters, Mohammed and Tobias, and thank you very much, Sumedha. We hope you can make it for future webinars as well. Thanks once again, and have a good day.